have the privilege of working together and doing the next portion of our presentation. And we're going to take a brief look at the why, the what, and origin of physical literacy. And I think as John shared an immense amount of information that's starting our day, that there really is a lot, but what we're trying to do is kind of give a snapshot, and then from there you can take away and move forward into your schools. So why physical literacy? We want to just kind of establish that why piece. Why is it important? Well, tag team, good team.
Yeah.
And we're going to just start with a quick video clip.
I probably would make a time machine.
I would make medicine for the sick.
I'd probably invent something new.
我会赢到5个总冠军戒指。
If I could have an extra 5 years to live.
You said 5, right?
5 years. It's a long time.
I would try to fix everything I did bad.
I would bring my uncle back because I miss him very much.
I would get more hamsters.
I would probably want to go looking for dark matter.
I think I'd go looking for aliens.
If I could live an extra 5 years.
I was thinking about making like a helicopter, like a wooden helicopter, but I don't have any wood.
I want to go check out the moon sometime.
I'd probably teach my sister not to hate tuna.
I would try and invent a machine that lets you run at light speed. If I had 5 more extra years to live,
I would be the boss of all the chipmunks.
Eu cantaria na frente de 1 milhão de pessoas.
I don't really know. I think I'd do anything. Why are you asking me that?
So good food for thought. For the first time, each generation has become healthier and stronger and better and swifter and faster, and we've all kind of, let's call it, outlived the last generation. And so for the first time, it's projected that the next generation will have a shorter lifespan by approximately 5 years. So good starting place as to a why. And of course, being physically literate, knowing fundamental movement skills and being able to move with competence and confidence can only enhance one's lifestyle. So that's the first reason why. Next, sometimes what we've seen in society too. Okay, 2 seconds, please. So taking a look. So we're saying, okay, so why be physically active? What we're finding is a trend in our society for obesity to be on the rise. We've all experienced that. We've seen, commercials. We've seen information. We've seen studies. And so we're saying that's also a place to start, is to take a look at that. Our environment has become an obesogenic environment. Well, what does that mean? It means that it's very easy for people to overconsume and maybe overconsume the wrong types of nutrition. 2 of our biggest sponsors for the Olympic Games, Coca-Cola and McDonald's. So we're seeing these brilliant athletes, very physically literate, performing, and at the same time these companies are supporting that. And so while watching that, at the same time that's being promoted. So our society has become, the new word, obesogenic. A little bit, so this is evolution. So from the monkey stage up through to humanity, and then at the end. What we were really designed to do all along is to move. As adults, as individuals, as children, and you can see that when children first start to learn to crawl, walk, move, they're constantly on the go. What happens as they get into their teen years, we become adults, and then what happens during most of our day? A lot of us, except for those that are teaching full-time in the gymnasium, are perhaps spending a great deal of time being sedentary. And so we talk about evolution, but are we really evolving? Something to think about. What we're discovering, there is a problem. And we talk about nutrition for sure plays a part, but also we need to take a look at movement. Sometimes people say it's not so much an obesity epidemic, but maybe a non-physical activity epidemic. We're spending less and less time moving. So data from 2000, 2009, I'll just let you take a look at that. So the children are actually heavier, taller, fatter, rounder, less flexible, and weaker than we were in 1981. And forecasting that if something doesn't happen, the problem's just increasing. How many of you have seen the physical activity report card? Has anybody seen this? I love the title, Is Active Play Extinct? And so in the showcase there, the ball, the red and white blue ball that used to be, I mean, maybe back in my day it was really popular. But I think, we know what that is. Active play was just a way of life. Kids were outside. The only time they came home was when either the street lights went on or mom called them in for dinner. And we're seeing a different direction this year. How many of you know what was the last grade on that report card? Pardon me? D minus? Anybody else? I'm just thinking for the physical activity thing. Thanks. Tina suggests it's an F. That is correct. So out of our Canadian children, only 7% of the children and youth in Canada are meeting the recommended 60 minutes of daily physical activity. And then down here, healthy bodies and healthy minds for a healthy society. I remember going to university many years ago, and that was one of our papers we had to write, is what is the connection between the body and mind? Well, it actually hasn't changed. It's still very important, a very important piece. But with the lack of activity, that's affecting the whole person. And John talked a little bit about that this morning is developing that whole person. So if that piece of the puzzle is really low and children aren't getting that activity, then it affects the whole child. Hours of activity. So it says here 46% of Canadian kids get 3 hours or less per week. Does anybody know what the recommendations for physical activity is? The recommended amount of physical activity.
60 minutes a day.
Thank you. 60 minutes a day. So what they're saying is less than half of our children are getting 3 hours in a whole week. So in a week, 60 minutes a day would be 7 hours a week. After school and on weekends, a lot of time spent being sedentary. And then really down here it's saying children say they'd rather be out playing. But in reality, what are they doing? Maybe not. And maybe that opportunity is not there. And just thinking back to that evolution picture, I remember working on the farm, like we worked outside on the farm all the time, and my dad saying, work smarter, not harder. And so what we've tried to do, and what technology has tried to do, is improve that, is smarter, making things easier, making things faster, when in essence, perhaps that's part of the problem, is things are maybe too easy, too quick. We're not having to walk to get our food. We're not having to hunt it down. It's at the corner store. It's readily available. And then what are we choosing once we get there? I recently read an article that suggests that children 2 years and under should not be exposed to screens at all. And we do see this. Or I don't know how many times I've driven to work in the morning and you look over in the van and the kid, it's not even, it's barely even breakfast time and they've already got half a video, watched. So just things are changing. So the why is we just need to be really aware that activities levels are down, sedentary behavior is up, food choices are not necessarily the best, what's readily available and simply available. So part of the why.
Thank you. I'm a notes girl. She's off the cuff. So does anybody know the actual game? So just going back to the last one actually. Do you know what the game is that 1,700 years were spent playing this brand new PlayStation game in the first 24 hours? 1,700 years were played in the first 24 hours of the release of this game. Does anybody know what it is? I heard it. Yes, Call of Duty. 1,700 years in the first 24 hours. So every year a new Call of Duty comes out. I know because my kids want it. So that's just astounding to me that many hours. And then we get to the reasons why kids are wanting to be active outside, but they're not active, or they're not playing because maybe they don't have the opportunity. And it kind of comes down to what's happening at home. And so we get these children in our schools or wherever we work, and maybe we coach them, but they're coming into our schools, and they're basically our bubble-wrapped generation. We're worried about their safety. We're worried that the boogeyman's around the corner so they can't go to the park and play. We're really raising a generation of kind of overprotective, unimaginative children. And maybe those aren't your children in here. But that's the majority, which is what we're facing every day in our schools. We have what's called helicopter parents. And I heard this from Dr. Vicki Harbour, and some of our slides have a U of A symbol on them because Dr. Vicki Harbour at the University of Alberta, she is an expert with the Canadian Sport for Life group and in physical literacy. So some of this information is from her, and she would love to be here, but she happens to be hiking in the Yukon right now. So I was like, can't you come back early? But anyways, what she talks about is this helicopter parenting, and we have the hovering parent. I don't want my child to get hurt. They need to wear knee pads if they fall down, heaven forbid, if they hurt themselves or bang themselves. Then you have the Black Hawk Down parent, those kind of helicopter parents, where they go straight to the top. Something's wrong. They need to go right to the principal or right to the superintendent. You've seen those parents. And then you have, in Sweden, they call them the curling parents, where they need to make sure they sweep everything in front of their children because they don't want anything to get in their way, so they sweep it all out of their way. So those are called the curling parents. But we have probably seen them all, and we have these highly structured environments, but a real managed childhood, overscheduled, under-imaginative. So what are our children? Well, maybe they're under pressure. And this is just an extraordinary book that is written by Carl Honoré, and a couple of other books that he's written about In Praise of Slow, and just coming back to that idea of what's happening to our children and youth, why are they so under pressure, and what can we do to help them. So it's a really great read if you've ever seen it. And I don't know if you can see this at the back. Do you ever worry that we're putting too much pressure on them at this age? And so, covering, making sure they don't make any mistakes. And a child is only 10 years old once. A child's only 6 or 12 or however they're old once. And so we're putting these expectations that are really adult expectations on our children and youth today. So should we have children train like an adult? So I want to show you a quick video. And you might have seen this. You can find all of these on YouTube if you wanted to, show your staff.
Change is coming to tennis, and kids are leading the way. It's called 10 and Under Tennis, and it's a fun way for your kids to really learn the game. With courts and equipment modified to fit them, kids will develop faster and better and enjoy themselves along the way. So get your kids involved now. With 10 and Under Tennis, every child can learn to love the game.
How many of you have seen those tennis balls or those short-handled tennis rackets and then the tennis balls? So, can you explain?
They're a lot lighter. The tennis balls in general are bigger, they're lighter, and they're easier for them to get that stroke because it does fly off the racket a lot. Well, there's a higher success rate with it.
And it's a high-density foam, isn't it? They're soft, so if you get hit with it, not like a real tennis ball, official tennis ball, you could. There's children that shy away from those kind of things. But modifying the equipment, modifying, you notice the playing space, the court, just to allow for more confidence, and so we can help develop more physical literacy in our children and youth. So you might have heard of the James Naismith story and how basketball was invented in Springfield, Massachusetts, with the peach basket in the college at Springfield. James Naismith and his, some young teammates, they actually invented basketball. And the reason why the height of a basketball hoop is 10 feet high is because that's the height of their college gym. And so we have kids playing on 10-foot high basketball hoops. Why? So this is maybe how we see, an adult playing, or an NBA player playing on, and a high school kids playing on. But I think this is how a phys ed teacher sees it. Different levels, different opportunities, more success, more chances to practice without getting frustrated. So just that modification and how important that is to remember as a phys ed teacher, or working with children and youth. So we know that John was just showing you some pictures of no ball playing, those things that he collects. He says he hangs around, I don't know, schoolyards, or he Googles them. But he said he finds these all over the place. We had in the corner where we live, we have the Dragon Lady, and actually that's what her license plate says, Dragon Lady. I hope she's not going to watch us later on our website. So she wouldn't let my kids play street hockey because if the ball rolled up on her grass, big trouble. So they never did. So it was a cul-de-sac situation. We thought, perfect, that's why we're moving into a cul-de-sac, so they can play. But nope, no ball hockey allowed. So we should have had a big sign up there, but we didn't. So here is an example of what happens when there are things banned.
Would you support a ban on having balls in Toronto schools? Considering the administration of some of these schools, I'm hardly convinced a ban is necessary. This past week, for example, a person accidentally got hit by a rubber ball, and the immediate result was a ban on all games that use these dangerous balls in that school. Games that have been around this earth since feet could kick and balls could roll and children play. But what a great piece of wisdom this ban is. Imagine earlier days, the horror of growing up in barbarous times when balls were kicked and kids kicked them. In some cases, chased them on grassy meadows, batted balls, caught them, bounced and threw them. How did the pioneer generations cope with the terrors of tennis and ping pong, the carnage of badminton and football, baseball and soccer? I'll tell you, they lived short, happy lives and went to their graves with all sorts of bumps and bruises, cut lips and dented shins, wobbly teeth and shaky knees. It was not a tidy picture in some of the early funeral homes. But we're enlightened now, especially in Toronto, which is a kind of Shangri-La for nanny staters. They tax grocery bags up here. It saves the planet, you know. Now, for the sake of some parental noggin getting hit by a stray soccer ball, Toronto school may ban, prohibit and stay any form of childhood amusement whatsoever that involves motion, coordination, anything spherical, elastic and inflated, and most emphatically, fun. There was a year, for example, the Toronto School Board ripped up a mountain of playground equipment for fear someone might slide down a slide the wrong way. It's one thing to protect children, It's another thing to wrap them in regulatory gauze and smother them in utterly risk-free activities to so protect them that they never see life in any of the random, sometimes even hurtful manifestations it has. The world is not friction-free, and it never will be. But consider the children is, I guess, just a cover for another cover. In other words, the school is protecting its well-padded and utterly shielded bureaucratic backside from any potential backlash or useless lawsuit by prescribing against all play activities that children actually like, to protect it, the school, from legal hassle. Pity. A bit of mild daring might also be a useful example to set the children. But if you're going to ban their ball games, chances are that showing them a little daring is not on the curriculum either. As another sage has pointed out, we're only truly safe when we can't do anything at all. And that comforting state usually comes underground and with a tombstone. For the National, I'm Rex Murphy.
So as well, something that we are a bit ignoring as well too is the outdoors, the great outdoors. And there's an opportunity for children to really explore and experience. And if you have a chance to talk with Robbie after, he was an outdoor ed, I'm calling it outdoor ed, but adventure guide with children. And so good opportunity. So what we're finding is that children are not getting out and exploring and experiencing the great outdoors as much as they could. And so what the result is, Richard Louv calls it, is a nature deficit disorder, where they're not connected with the outside, not connected with nature, not connected with the environment, like John talked about this morning. And so there's that disconnect where they're not able to, enjoy the great outdoors, and it is affecting their well-being. Has anybody read this book? It's by my bedside. It's on my list. Has anybody read the Dr. John Rady book? So when we saw Dr. John Rady, he was up at the HPEC, the Health and Physical Education Conference 3 years ago in Red Deer. And so he said 3 things. He says enjoying physical activity with a friend in the great outdoors gives you the optimal benefit from physical activity. So that's something to keep in mind. So it's a really important part of our curriculums and our programs for our students is to make sure that, yes, we have, perhaps a gymnasium or a classroom, but also to get them outside to experience that. And I think part of that, too, is when Tracy talked about the bubble wrap and the helicopter parents, is they need to experience the falls, the tumbles, the scrapes, so that they know what their risk boundaries are too. If we never fall down, we never realize that we can get up, and the kids don't try. So they're kind of, it's like protected and not really knowing what to do in an adverse situation. So what is physical literacy?
I think we'll, I know a lot of this has been said with John, but what we want you to do right now is, you see something quite blurry on the screen, and it's supposed to be blurry, by the way. We want you to take out your index card that's in your folder, extra large index card, and we want you to write down one thing that you can think of that is blurry about physical literacy to you. So something that maybe you're struggling with, you want some clarification with when it comes to physical literacy. If you're ready, would anyone like to share what maybe, before you came in, or still?
I'm just wondering if the decrease in physical literacy is actually leading to an increase in injuries later on in teenagers and adults.
Did everybody hear that at the back? Laura's wondering if the decrease in physical literacy is resulting in an increase in injury. Yes?
So I find that there's a real disconnect between how we teach the and taking away all the risks and so on. But when you look at how youth actually are playing outside, the other end of it is the long boards, the skateboards, they are so engaged in risky activities, and I don't know if we're giving them the skill set earlier because we've taken away so much.
Like our gymnastics programs even, to learn the balance and coordination and that agility to be able to tumble and fall, and yeah, when you're on a skateboard or So competition, is it good? Is it something that we should encourage? Is it something that should be limited, or just competition in general?
Yeah, I guess just competition in general. People saying it's a bad thing, no competition. What it's doing to us afterwards, you know, how if we don't learn how to compete now, how do we deal with losing in the workforce and in life?
And does it help teach fair play and sportsmanship and cooperation and teamwork and leadership and followership? I think that Marina and Glenn, there'll be some real competition within ourselves when we're doing the activities downstairs. I think a lot of us in this room are competitive by nature, and so some of that might come out in yourself. Setting goals, is that enough competition? Yeah, just that word itself. Thank you.
But I was just thinking about this interactive stuff. What about children who are physically incapable of doing all these things? Talk about how they're
Yeah, so when you look at that slide that John put up here, we have one similar, but if you can't run, well, a child in a wheelchair can't run. If they're paraplegic, they cannot run. So what are we adapting to help that child wheel? I think some of the wording of that, some of those skills will change and we'll have to modify. That child might not be able to kick, but we can put a board on the bottom of their wheelchair, or we can enable them to do other skills. So thinking of modifications for those skills, but yeah, the wording is really, really important. Especially, I've worked with and know the people who work at the Stedward Center, and they work in adapted physical activity. So with kids who have physical disabilities. So it's very interesting when they see those slides. Wait a minute, the children that I work with cannot do those skills. So we have to think of the children in our classrooms and our gyms that can't do some of those skills. Okay, thank you. Oh, one more.
Participation and how to engaging the parent and the child.
And you can't motivate. You can't force motivation. It has to be internal. So what are you doing in your gym to help that participation so we have them want to keep coming back for more? That's the ultimate goal. We want them to develop physical literacy, ultimate goal of phys ed, but we also want them to keep coming back for more. And what are we doing in our gyms or outside or wherever we're teaching phys ed for it to be a comfortable, safe learning environment, fun. I hear lots of phys ed teachers, it has to be fun. They say that, and I agree.
Sorry, if I could squeeze one more in assessment.
Yes. Assessment.
John talked about all those subjects that with the standardized testing and things. What does that look like?
And that's a really great point. So tomorrow, Doug Gleddy will be here, and we're going to dive into some of those assessment tools, like the Passport for Life, the Play tool, and some of those things. So on the side, there are some resources that you can take a look at throughout the day, but there's one called the Play tool over there. Right now, Passport for Life is a PHE Canada assessment tool, and that one is actually free right now for any teachers who want to sign up. And we'll be showing you the website to go on there. But there was just an email blast. If you want to take part in a free pilot Passport for Life pilot, then you may do that. I believe if you're a K to 6 teacher. So we'll give you the website that you can go to that. Thank you for sharing, everyone. So now after talking here, after maybe listening to John especially, maybe some things have come into focus. Do we have time? Maybe?
Sure.
Yeah. So we have time just for you to write down what has already come into focus when it comes to physical literacy. So really quickly, what has come into focus for you?
And once you've identified that, if you maybe want to talk at your tables and just share one thing at your table, it's like Has anything started to click? And if nothing has at this point, that's fine, because that's what the whole 2 days is about, is that piece by piece, everybody's giving a little nugget, and hopefully by the end, Friday, by the time you go away, it's like, it's clear. Might never be totally clear. But if there's something that's already clicked that you want to share at your table, that would be great. So I just want to draw you back for a moment. Can you just wave if you can hear my voice? Just wave if you can hear my voice. Thank you. Awesome. So I want to just draw you back. Sorry to cut the conversation short, because it's always so rich. And so I've heard some good things over listening in, is comparing it to the numeracy and the literacy. And we'll talk more about that as we go along. But Tracy and I did want to share a little bit of where did physical literacy come from. And no, it actually wasn't Tracy and I. But Glenn and John and Doug and I had a chance to be at the Physical Literacy Conference in Banff in May. And the beautiful woman in the middle is Dr. Margaret Whitehead. And so Dr. Whitehead, she is one of the earliest pioneers of physical literacy. And for over 20 years, she's been developing and studying it. And it is evolving. And it's constantly evolving. So what we're learning, we have the definition from PHE Canada, but she has also shared, she shared her definition with us at the Physical Literacy Conference. So she says, as appropriate to each individual's endowment, and so maybe that comes into play when we talk about individuals with physical disabilities, Justin. So with an individual's endowment, physical literacy can be described as a disposition to capitalize on the human embodied capability, wherein the individual has the motivation, confidence, physical competence, knowledge and understanding to value and take responsibility for maintaining purposeful physical pursuits, activities throughout the life course. And so it's not something that you just, you take a test and yep, you're physically literate, but it is fluid. And depending, who has just had the knee surgery? Okay, so Laura just had knee surgery. So right now her physical literacy it might be a little bit less than it was prior surgery and prior to her injury. So it's fluid throughout our lifespan, and it depending. And even as we age, our capability, again, it changes to some degree. In some that maybe aren't as consistently physically active, might be a little bit lower.
Joyce?
Yes?
Can you just put that into common language? Like, I like the statement, but if you were to talk to parents or something, that they would,
Awesome. Canadian Sport for Life, thank you, awesome. And Dr. Whitehead is beautiful, very, just a beautiful person, and very academic and very intelligent, and so thank you, that's a good. So according to Canadian Sport for Life, fundamental movement skills and fundamental sport skills that permit a child to read their environment and make appropriate decisions while moving confidently and with control in a wide range of physical activities in both indoor and outdoor environments. So really being able to say, okay, I'm heading over here, oh, there's somebody there. So really being aware of your whole environment, being confident and competent in that environment. Does that make sense? A little more clear. And what also, if you take a look at the definition of literacy and physical literacy, some of the words are just interchangeable. Same idea, literacy, confidence, and what John talked about this morning, and just taking it into that physical realm. Canadian Sport for Life model. And so it says sport in there. And what I like to, so it's the different, so active start is the basics where they learn to movements, fundamental movements, and then learning to train. What our role, especially at the elementary level, and is to have them experience a variety of movements. So what I like to compare the sport model to is really in physical education, we want all children to be active, healthy, lifelong learners, lifelong learners. Same with the Canadian Sport for Life. They want to have all Canadians being active for life. But they also want them to have a choice so that if they choose to train and become a competitive athlete, they have that choice. Has anybody read The Hunger Games? Anybody read 50 Shades of Grey? I haven't, but I know somebody who is. Anyhow, so comparing it to literacy, he talked about the alphabet, the phrases, the sentence, so that if you choose, you can read The Hunger Games or 50 Shades of Grey or Harry Potter. If you don't have the alphabet and the basic skills, you cannot choose that book. Same with physical literacy. If you have the fundamental movement skills, if you can run, skip, hop, jump, have that base, if you choose to be a high-level competitive athlete, you have those skills. But really at the ground roots level is that all Canadians are healthy and active. We want all of our students to be able to read to some degree, and if they choose to go to a higher level and read those books, we have given them those basic skills in order to do that. Does that analogy make sense? When I came across that analogy, I thought, okay, that makes sense to me. Because some people get hung up on the word sport. And children can choose sport, but they can also choose physical activity of any kind. But they need to have that alphabet like John refers to, or they need to have those fundamental movements in order to make those choices for life. Anything else on the model?
You notice that on the model there are no ages. So really, this active start piece, that's 0 to 6 years old. Then we have 6 to 9 years old. A little bit different between boys and girls because of their developmental levels. They develop at different rates. So it's about 6 to 10 or so for boys and 6 to 9 for girls. And then the learn to train is really beyond that. We hope that kids don't choose and specialize in one sport until after this stage. Maybe at 14 years old, they decide to train. But we have 8-year-olds only playing soccer, 8-year-olds only playing hockey, 9-year-olds, only doing one sport. And I feel that it's a detriment to our kids' physical literacy because they're not developing in other areas. I presented at a hockey school. And so I was doing a physical literacy session. And the teachers were adamant that these kids, when they went to go play baseball, hardly any of them could throw a ball because that's all they had ever done was play hockey. And so when they get to the baseball field, they're very physically illiterate, which is so interesting. You have these high-level athletes, but they're concentrating too much on one sport. So we hopefully will have some tools and we'll share with you some websites that you can go to show parents, to show coaches, to show staff at your school or wherever you work. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, I played a lot of dodgeball. And there's sometimes you get these massive guys who are muscled for miles, and they can't throw. They can't throw and they can't catch, and they're scared of the ball when you throw it. And so they look like they'd be this big, massive person intimidating, and then they push the ball at you.
So they've developed these skills in other areas, but didn't actually get exposed to maybe all of the areas that they could be. So a variety of physical activity.
As a parent of a Tier 1 soccer player and a junior hockey player, even within that sport, you have a position that is specific. Yes. Your daughter's being on defense when she was 7, and now she's 12. Or my son's been on defense also before Pee-wee. I would never think at 16 he could ever be a forward. Ever. Would not even attempt because he's in that position.
And it starts at a very young age. Oh, big defenseman, or goalie, or the keeper. Yeah. And so, how many of you are coaches as well? Okay, that's fantastic. Because to be a coach and also teach kids phys ed, even though you're coaching, I've seen high-level midget AAA hockey coaches bring in physical literacy into their hockey program, where the dryland training is quite yoga and those kind of things. But he's actually getting them to throw a ball, to kick a ball on the ice, even though they're still on their skates. That's an important part of hockey. But they're doing some other things to get them to learn strategy and offense and defense. And yeah, it's the greatest thing to see a forward go back to defense. They really hustle back after they've played defense for a while to help their defenders. They sure learn quickly.
I was just saying that's the difference between probably some of the guys that I'm thinking of, that Michael Jordan or Wayne Gretzky, that had excellent careers in baseball as well as the basketball and hockey, or Nash, who could play soccer and basketball. But they grew up in a time when they did those different sports. They didn't necessarily specialize right away. those kind of holistic athletes that are the best have great breadth.
And even the Red Deer Rebels, used to be Sutter, Daryl Sutter. He's the recruiter for Red Deer Rebels. He was in the paper, and Canadian Sport for Life, of course, posted it on their website because he's specifically recruiting players that have a multi-sport background, and he wants them to be well-rounded. So things are really changing. People are becoming educated and realizing that, oh, it's not just about this kid who just played hockey all year round, or played soccer and picking on hockey. It's not just about that one sport, but or gymnastics. That's all that child does. So it's great. It's getting down to it's getting up to the coaching level. It's getting down to the parents. It's getting to the phys ed teacher.
And just a quick story, my nephew is 10, and their team recently won the Nationals in their baseball. I'm thinking 10-year-olds at Nationals, it sounded a bit like, oh my gosh. I went to see him one weekend and saw 2 games, and he played 3 different positions over the weekend that I saw him. He pitched, he played first base, and then outfield. And I'm like, wow. But the coaches do that, so the kids are experiencing this throughout, and they challenge the bases, and they're just teaching them to be smart players. So it was really fun to see that. And then during the winter, he plays hockey, and then he tries to play at least 2 or 3 different sports. And I think that's evident because then he's got that body awareness, but he also has an idea of positioning in different sports. It's not just defense for the whole time, but he has that exposure. So I think that's what we're really advocating with especially the Canadian Sport for Life model is advocating that. Lots of variety of experiences, that confidence and competence with your body. Then if you choose to specialize, there's an opportunity later on. As educators, sometimes we feel that it's, now it's kind of like, okay, now go back to the trenches and you shall depart the information. But just be rest assured that we are starting to work together with other sectors. The health sector, recreation and sport are all talking physical literacy. So when Catherine comes to us from the recreation sector, it's like, okay, she's got this idea. She's on the same page as us. We're talking physical literacy. We understand the importance of that breadth at the young age, but if they want to specialize. And so we're trying to ensure that the students are achieving competence and confidence in their fundamental movement skills. Canadian Sport for Life. Again, that's Canadian Sport for Life. They're advocating great website for activities and information, and they are, like we said, advocating that breadth at the young level.
Help me out here. Oh, good. Swim to it.
And even it was brought to our attention, if somebody has a birthday party, they're going to have a swim party. In elementary, I'm not comfortable in the water. Not going to go. Hey, we're going to go BMXing this weekend. Oh, never rode a bike. So when John talks about that whole person and that opportunity, it's if the children don't have those experiences, then they're not going to be comfortable, even in those simplest situations. Because I know a lot of times teachers will say, well, why do we need to teach them that sort of thing? Why is it important for all teachers to be aware of their physical literacy? It is because it affects their lives. And here's visuals of the fundamental movement skills, things that are needed in order to be physically literate.
Dancing, yes, we need to add that one. That's definite, yeah. With dancing, there comes a lot of locomotion and stability. Really, yeah, you can really add it. Me? Oh, and sorry, are we making you dizzy? We're bouncing back and forth. So really, Margaret Whitehead has taught us that physical literacy is a journey, and it's over your life course. And so that's what I hope that you can take away from this photo. And it's developing the whole person. How many of you have seen this wellness education, especially our high school teachers? And so we know that there's information coming forth from Alberta Education about a new wellness curriculum. It's being developed. Things are moving along. and our new HPE 10, 20, 30 courses for Alberta are being developed, but it won't come for a few more years. But this is just basically the embodiment, and I heard it said over here, holistic approach to physical literacy, wellness, and just the development of the whole person. So we talked about what you can't do if if you can't run. What kinds of things might that take you out of? What kinds of sporting events or activities? Just throw them out. Soccer.
Baseball.
Yeah. Basketball. Running to the lake water.
Catching the bus.
Yes, any of those, those are life events. Up here, yeah, absolutely. Some of those life events. Here we have just some of the sporting things that it might take you out of.
I love you including the life events too.
Yeah, I do too. Climbing the stairs, reaching for something on the top shelf. How about throwing? What does that take you out of, possibly? What did you say back there?
Saving lives. Saving lives.
Obviously, yeah. All right, and
it was rumored it takes you out of beer pong too.
Yeah. Throwing the bouquet.
Catching the bouquet.
Yeah. So has anybody heard of goal ball? It's always like a question, yeah. And do you know much about it? Have you played it? Or?
We had a couple of students that were blind.
Yeah.
So they came up and the association came up. One of our teachers, it was for kids that were blind. So she brought them up. It was pretty cool.
Yeah,
and the ball makes noise, so a visually impaired child, blind child can catch it, or adult. There's goal ball tournaments and leagues. So this makes me think when you said association came out, you can get Alberta associations if you're from here, and I'm sure in BC, and I'm sure in the Northwest Territories. You can get those associations to come out, and they have modified programs. Almost all of those, rugby, lacrosse, so forth, volleyball, they've created modified games and activities for kids at different ages. So they'll come out and play those with
Yeah, what
kids.
I found was it actually puts everybody on the same playing field, and it became really, everybody got involved. And it was competitive, but it wasn't that the excelled student that was really good at throwing activities.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't excel necessarily there. They kind of leveled the playing field a bit, but it brought more enthusiasm out of everybody. So.
Absolutely.
We did wheelchair basketball at a number of events, and it was just huge. They received, and yeah, all the kids and stuff.
Wheelchair basketball, goal ball levels the playing field that we're talking about. Also, playing a noodle game, using a pool noodle instead of a baseball bat. A friend of mine that teaches high school phys ed, but you can do this at a younger level, she took a old sweatshirt from the Lost and Found, wrapped it in hockey tape, athletic tape, till it was, pretty, totally covered. And it basically slumps down, so it's very hard to swing because it's very wiggly. So it really levels the playing field. She has kids who play competitive baseball, and yeah, it's great. So those kind of activities. Thanks for those. And the last one, if you can't swim, my father-in-law can't swim, and so he's 72, and we know that he won't be a diver or play water polo. He comes on the boat with his life jacket, but he doesn't feel comfortable kayaking or sailing. So, and Joyce talked about the kids and their social events. So really, we get down to the fundamental movement skills. Specifically, these are just a few of them. This stability skills, you'll also hear it called non-locomotor. Brian said it earlier. You'll also hear it called body control movement or body control skills. That's what Canadian Sport for Life calls it. Some call it stability skills, but they're all the same. And here are just some more fundamental movement skills. Continue. Waddle, slither. I like it. Dozens of others. Okay, and when we look at the phys ed program of studies, this is the Alberta one. Our aim is to get our kids active and healthy for life. And Margaret Whitehead has stated that the goal of every phys ed program and the aim of every phys ed program in the world should be to develop physical literacy. And we cannot teach physical literacy. We can teach these things, but we have kids develop physical literacy by teaching the fundamental movement skills. Okay. I think we're just going to race through this, Joyce.
Yeah, I'm just going to mention it. So just is because we're Alberta teachers, is we want to at least see the program of studies. How many people have actually gone through the phys ed program of studies, so very familiar with it? So just to reinforce that the fundamental movement skills can be taught through the 5 dimensions of the Alberta curriculum. First of all, individual activities, and there's examples, pictures of what individual activities are. Types of gymnastic skills. Dance. Who was missing dance before? Very important component of the curriculum. Alternative environments, so that you're working inside and outside, like we mentioned, very important. And in the Canadian Sports for Life, they talk about on ice, water, snow, so all of the environments outside. And then, of course, games, where there's a real opportunity to not only develop fundamental movement skills, but those fair play aspects and cooperation as well. So we just also wanted you to know a couple of good places to go for resources, and we'll talk a little bit more about resources later in the day. But PHE Canada, so Physical Health Education Canada, CS for All, Canadian Sport for Life, Physical Literacy, and we're going to talk about the Passport for Life. That'll be talked about tomorrow. So just some good places to go for good resources.
In your folder, you have a one-pager that has the recipe card lesson plans, the Be Fit for Life cards, and the PHE, thank you, and the, oh, sorry, lots of writing in here already. That's awesome. And the PHE, Fundamental Movement Skills. We have these samples over there, and after today, you'll be taking away one set of the Move and Play cards as part of your registration, and also one set of either a K to 3 or 4 to 6 or 7 to 9 recipe card lesson plans from Ever Active. So the other thing is, if you fill in using the code for the Fundamental Movement Skills resources, you have till September 30th with PHE Canada to get a discount, a 10% discount on any of the resources that are printable, because they have some videos and things like that. But any of the printable resources that you see at the back, you can get online and use that code.
And so these are just, this is the sample look of the resources that are coming. And also the physical activity idea on our website. Shannon, who was our education coordinator last couple of years, great videos been downloaded and lots of great feedback from teachers, because they can see what the activity looks like and then teach it, or else even use the video clip directly. And I'll let you conclude.
Yeah, what was I going to say? It's all good. Okay, so, oh, I know what I was going to say. This reminds me of, just the travels and kind of where I've been, or where we've been, and where my family has been, even this summer. But it not only reminds me of that, it kind of reminds me of where we're going in the development of physical literacy with ourselves, because you're going to find out a little bit about yourself this afternoon, and then with our children. So how do we feel confident ourselves, and then be able to teach those skills to our children so they can feel comfortable? Okay, so thank you very much. We hope that we've provided a good understanding of the why, the what, and the origin of physical literacy before we break for lunch. And then are there any comments or questions before we do that? I believe there are some vegetarian lunches out there. So just so you know, if you stated vegetarian, then please take that. Am I getting ahead of myself?
Nope,
oh,
not at all.
Thank you very much for your attentiveness. And this afternoon, we are going to meet in the auditorium. So that's where the afternoon will be. Okay?
Thank you.